We are live now. But we'll call you. Co-owner, is that the?
Yeah,
You had a good title.
I was vice president, but a guy bumped me up, so he called me director. I heard that was actually under vice president, so he messed with me a little bit. But yeah, I'm one of the founders of the company.
Fair enough. Cool. So we're going to talk specifically starting with UV, and then we can maybe talk about some of the other products. But I want to focus on UV to begin with, because that's one that a lot of people are familiar with. There's a lot of confusion about it. Again, for anybody who's in chat, thank you so much for joining us. You can ask questions in chat, or if you have something that you want to specifically ask, when the time comes, you can raise your hand, and then I will bring you on and unmute you, and then you can actually talk to Ron and I about specific questions. Now, I told you this beforehand, Ron. Our audience is a lot of technicians, and a lot of them who do have questions, and they like to ask them. So I'm sure we'll get to that point here. We will not go over an hour. We may even be shorter than that. But just to start with, I guess, describe a little bit about Fresh-Aire UV, what you all are, just so that everybody knows kind of, the scope of your business.
Yeah, Fresh-Aire UV was founded by myself and Chris Willett. Chris Willett worked for RGF Environmental. He was their director of engineering for almost 8 years. He actually studied physics and mechanical engineering in college and focused on ozone and UV light technology. So believe it or not, there was a focus on that back in the early 90s. I'm a degreed engineer as well. Mechanical based, but I've always been in the sales side of the business. But Fresh-Aire UV was founded a little over 18 years ago. We purchased a company named Triatomic, used to make ozone generators. So we know a lot about ozone. We sold ozone for about 10 years under the Triatomic brand. But Fresh-Aire UV has been involved in UV light disinfection in air conditioning systems. And we've evolved into making carbon-based technologies and purity filters, as well as LED lights. So, but residential, commercial, ice machines, well, a lot of these products have come about from contractors that are with us today in the chat room because of their needs and desires and what was requested from the field. So we're actually the largest in our sector right now, with again, probably double, triple growth over the last 8 days. So, so it's been a challenge, but it's all proven UV based technology is what we're working with. We try not to exaggerate the claims as best as we can, and try to quell some of the claims made by our contractor and distributor friends that just don't know enough about the technology. So most of my life is training and educating, which I appreciate the opportunity to do today with you guys, Brian.
Yeah, and that's big. So I met Ron at Hardy. We got to talking about some shared passion topics, and it was a good conversation. And that made me turn to you when the time came to have this conversation, which I'm always very careful about these sorts of conversations, especially publicly, and who I have them with, because there is a lot of nuance. There is a lot of salesmanship that goes on to all this, and there's nothing wrong with a little marketing. I mean, we all market, we all sell to some degree, but what's really important is, especially in times like these, that we are completely transparent about what we do and what we don't do, and what works and what doesn't work, and all that sort of thing. So I want to start with, because you talked about the triatomic part, I want to jump right to the ugly here, because you mentioned ozone. And ozone is a good example of a ozone generators, I guess I'd say, is a good example of a product that had utility, but maybe was misapplied, or maybe had some challenges associated with it. So, and that also kind of dovetails into UV a little bit later. So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, ozone has been around for a long time, especially in air purification. And we got away with it for years because what it did, it would mask other odors. So who really loved these products was smokers, because it masked the smell of smoke. Ozone generators in flood and fire restoration are 1,000 times more ozone than you get out of a portable ozone generator that you'd see on a desktop. Those portable ozone generators, you have to leave the house. They will actually melt the paint on your paintings. They'll screw up your drywall. They will kill every plant in the house. So when you have toxic amounts of ozone, they're really good for flood and fire restoration, where you have that leftover lingering smell, where you can hit it with toxic amounts of UV or ozone. I'm sorry, but ozone generators, as we see today, are being being shunned by different states. California's banned them. New York's banned them. Canada's banned them. You're seeing a no ozone stamp from UL that's now available to a lot of products, because people have deemed ozone generators as harmful to your health and a lung irritant. And so that's why companies like ourselves used to make ozone generating UV lights, and we've gone away from it to use carbon-based products. But there's still a lot of ozone out in the market, and it's being sold as other technology. But in the end, if you put it under an ozone meter, it's a whole lot of ozone.
Yeah, and that's okay. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge with oxidizers in general. So ozone is is an oxidizer. So it bonds with other matter, and that's what makes it so good at reducing odors and all those sorts of things. But studies have shown, and the EPA has come out and addressed this, and there's been studies, like the Lawrence Berkeley study, I think is what it's called, have talked about oxidizers and how they can also impact the tissues inside your lungs and inside your body, and that sort of thing, which it really depends on the oxidizer, right? I mean, different oxidizers behave in different ways. And so what would your personal stance be, or the stance of your company be, as it stands right now, as it relates to specifically ozone? Does it have some role? Does it have no role? How does it fit in the marketplace today?
I call people that like ozone junkies. They literally want ozone. They want that smell, that clean smell. They put it in a homeowner's house, and that homeowner senses that fresh as a thunderstorm smell. It's not bothersome to about 20 to 30% of the population, but the rest of us really don't care for it. And it gives you headaches and problems in your lungs, et cetera. So we have moved away from ozone generating products completely, and we are using only carbon-based systems for air pollutants. So, I don't think ozone's ever going to go away, but the more states that have these requirements of no ozone, and now that UL has actually stood up and said, I'm going to be the one to determine if you have ozone or not, it's not going to be self-tested like it has been for years. Now that UL stood up, I think you're going to see a lot of states and a lot of distributors and contractors not offering ozone or oxidizer-based technologies in the future.
Fair enough. So let's talk about your shift in UV. So there's a type of UV that produces ozone. There's a type that doesn't. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the light spectrum is really cool, and I really recommend just go on any website and look up the light spectrum. Light spectrum is anywhere from infrared to ultraviolet and visible spectrums, microwave. You can do so much cool stuff with the UV spectrum. We're focused actually on the germicidal UVC spectrum. Now, the UVC spectrum peaks at 254 nanometers of light, which is a very small frequency. So when we peak at 185 nanometers of light, we actually get to ozone, the ozone spectrum. Now you'll actually smell ozone coming off of a light source. So it's pretty cool we can generate that. But that's why when you see a lamp that they say is a UVC lamp, it'll be 254. If it's an ultraviolet lamp, then it can be anywhere from 185 to 400, because that's where the UV spectrum rolls from, and even lower, but we don't really mess with anything lower than that. But yeah, you'll see that the UV spectrum just beyond the violet light, the violet color in a rainbow, is where we're playing around with these lamps.
Got it. Yeah. And I've put up, I need to give Nate Adams credit, because I've put up one of his slides from his recent presentation that he did with Retrotech that shows this exact thing that you're talking about, these spectrums. So I'll kind of reference some of these. I'll just show them on screen as you're talking, if it applies. So we are looking in that UVC spectrum. It's a little bit shorter wave in order to make sure that we're not producing UV. Now let's talk a little bit about where UV does really good and maybe where it has some limitations?
Yeah, when we first started this gig in 2002, really the biggest player was Honeywell, and Honeywell advertised 87% Airstream kill. Well, if you looked at the study, which is what I tell people to do all the time, you look at the study, what they did is they tested the weakest bacterium on the planet, and they did it at 1 cubic feet per minute. So literally, they had a boatload of time to disinfect this very weak microbial. So when people started to say, "What's your Airstream kill? What's your Airstream kill?" I wanted to punch every Honeywell guy in the face. I didn't. So sorry, I forgot.
Ron's a big guy, so that would hurt. Yeah.
And I didn't. And actually, weirdly enough, we actually make the Honeywell Air Bright for them now. So I don't
So
punch them in the face anymore.
easy.
Yeah, easy. But yeah, that 87% Airstream kill was something that I constantly had to battle. And that's when you have to educate people that UVC light takes time or intensity. And actually, if you have more time, you need less intensity. If you have less time, you need more intensity. So that's why, if you take a regular stick light, as we call them, and stick it into a coil and drain pan, it has unlimited time to keep those two things clean and disinfected. So that's the perfect that's the perfect means for that product. But if you're looking for Airstream kill, like I want to kill everything in the air, and you're a homeowner, you may have to stick in 50 of those lights at the same time. So that's the struggle with UV is to have everyone understand the technology and how it works. So
yeah, proximity is also big. So you talk about how much time does it have, and then what proximity does it have to the thing that you're irradiating. And so do you I've read your literature. It seems like you're pretty careful with the claims, which I do appreciate. As it relates to specifically UV, so we're not getting into PCO style products right now. Just as it relates to UV, do you see it as being more about irradiating surfaces versus Airstream, or do you still look at it as being both?
It really depends on your application. So when people say I'd like to kill everything in the air, we actually have them fill out a form online, and it asks for the duct size, it asks for the flow rates, it also asks for the critical microbial that they're trying to sterilize, because that is all over the map. You can get a weak microbial like Marasens, like what Honeywell did, at just a couple thousand microwatts per centimeter squared per second, up to, instead of a couple thousand, you can get up to 330,000 for Aspergillus niger, black mold in the air. So talk about 2,000 up to 330,000. You imagine if you're able to kill one, well, you're not able to kill the other unless you have another, couple hundred lamps. So we do ask people to give us their requirements. People ask for 90% Airstream kill versus 99% Airstream kill. So they want to kill it 90% of the time it goes by. And again, 90 is a lot of lamps. 99 is probably another double or triple lamps. So if we're talking about commercial lamps, we can actually grow the output of a commercial light substantially, make it a high output, put it in a highly reflective chamber or in the duct and make that highly reflective, and run those lights parallel to the Airstream. Well, now I can start to achieve close to a 90% kill rate of a specific microbial. Probably not black mold, because again, that's the hardest one to kill at 330,000 microwatts. But if you're talking about influenza, or like the topic of the day, SARS COVID-19, then yeah, those are easier microbials to irradiate. If they're in the plenum, if they're in the Airstream, we can size it to sterilize them.
And I think it's important, when you're talking in terms of viruses. I'm in the midst of writing this sort of like soup to nuts guide for contractors about what we know about COVID. And a lot of it has to just do with practical practices to keep technicians safe. But one thing that I think people often get confused is that some of the things we're talking about, some of the microbes are really alive, fungus, bacteria. Everybody would agree that those are alive, where viruses, they're really just kind of a packet and that contains some genetic material. And so you're really just neutralizing them more than you are killing them, because they weren't really alive to begin with, which doesn't matter a lot probably for this discussion. But I think it is pertinent in terms of what terms we use. And it's also pertinent in terms of how we think about viruses versus the other two. And so I wonder if you would comment on that, because I think one of the really big things that relates to UV, and and maybe your answer to this won't be so great for business, but I think you've got plenty of business as it is already right now, is, viruses don't grow on the coil in the way, especially that fungus does, molds do, that sort of thing. And so is it really going to be helpful for us to use kind of our traditional residential style UV light to irradiate an evaporator coil, if really are we going to have many viruses in there to begin with anyway? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree 1,000% with what you said. And, I really combat some of the other players in the market that claim that they're killing this virus, because in the end, we're not going to see this virus in the airstream. At least that's what everyone's telling us at this point, that this is spread, human to human contact and, on surfaces, which is in no way in the airstream. Now, if you look online, is the COVID-19 airstream, you're going to get some people saying it is, some people saying it isn't. But, no one, the CDC has not said it is. So therefore, we will not affect it in the airstream in the central air system of your home. Where, we promote our technology is for the day-to-day usage of your home, whether we have a pandemic or not, that we're creating a healthier environment, because like you said, mold and bacteria can grow on the coil. And that's what we're really combating. We want to create the healthy lungs of your home by keeping those UV lights irradiating that coil and drain pan 24/7.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it's really important to me that you engage with that question, because that is a really big thing right now, is this idea of people saying that we're preventing the virus from growing on your coil using a UV light. And that sort of conversation is happening. And I think that's just patently incorrect. And in the first place, it's unlikely, based on what we know about COVID-19 or SARS, that it's likely going to make it to the evaporator coil anyway. But if it does, and it could in certain circumstances, certainly, it's not like it's going to get on there and then propagate as it sits on that evaporator coil. So I just want to say that again to everybody. It's good to have these conversations, because we're talking about generally good practices, covering soup to nuts, the whole thing here. But I think we don't want to oversell products to customers, giving them false hope, even though in some cases the placebo effect may actually help them a little bit. And I'm always kind of conflicted on that. We want to be really careful that we tell people the truth about what these products can and can't do.
Yeah, I'm conflicted as well sometimes, because I don't suffer from asthma and allergies. I like the product in my home because my coil and drain pan stay clean here in Florida, and I don't have to worry about a buildup of growth, and it runs more efficiently, and my drain pan doesn't get clogged. But I have many family and friends and customers that have said, I know exactly when the light's starting to lose its effectiveness, and then I want another one. So you're absolutely right. It's basically just trying to create a healthier environment. And if you guys as contractors and distributors and all of our HVAC friends, just don't exaggerate the claims of these products. Just say, hey, we're going to create a healthier environment within your air conditioning system. And does this kill mold and bacteria and viruses? Yes, but again, it has to enter the central air unit.
Got it. So Vince had raised his hand, and he specifically asked that question. He asked it in this way. He says, does Fresh-Aire offer a light that will kill COVID-19 at a high rate in a residential system? And on the face of it, we already kind of answered that question, but I want to ask it again, because a consumer asks that to a technician. How would you answer that question in maybe a holistic way?
Yeah, we are actually running around a little portable device, a whole bunch of UV lights on a push cart, and we are irradiating each room in the building every other day, because we do want to keep our employees healthy. And, we are an essential business like you guys, so we're having to keep our staff working. But the only way to effectively kill microbials on surfaces with UV is to roll a UV light into the room.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so I've got some people raising their hands now. I'm going to allow some of them to come in and ask their questions. Let's see, Joel, did you have a question? I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You there, Joel? That's the problem with this hand raising thing. I don't know who actually is still ready to ask a question. Vince, I'm going to go ahead and unmute a few of you here. If any of you have questions, just go ahead and unmute yourselves, and you can ask your question. Anyway, so the next question that I wanted to ask you is relating to that intensity of the bulb, because I think a lot of people, and I used to say this, I said this for years. I said, if the light is on, is it working? And it seems like the more I learn about this, they actually do drop in intensity and become less effective, even though they are still lit.
Yeah, UVC lights are actually very similar to fluorescent light fixtures above, your heads in some of your buildings. They start to lose their intensity, and all of a sudden you see they start to kind of go black or brown on the ends, and then you realize, hey, I don't have as much light. And then you replace it, and you go, wow, I didn't remember I left my, my stapler over there in the corner because I couldn't see it. So UVC lights are just like fluorescents, where after a year or two, or even 3 in some models, you start to lose 60% of your effectiveness of UV, and then it starts to drop off to nothing. So within an extra year, you've got 0 output. And then you just have a blue light, which God decided it was blue. When we illuminated our lights with UVC, we get a visible light spectrum of blue as a byproduct.
Got it. Okay, so the visible light spectrum doesn't necessarily tell you anything about the intensity of the lamp as far as irradiating.
Correct. So it's kind of like an oil change. I tell people and contractors to inform their homeowners. You don't test your oil every time you get it changed. You just change it based on the manufacturer's recommendation. And I say the same thing with UV. If we tell you that it's a 2-year light or a 3-year light or a 1-year light, just let your homeowner know that, yeah, their intensity is going to drop off and it's time to replace it.
Absolutely. Let's see here. So Juan said, has the CDC given any IAQ manufacturer COVID-19 samples to test against?
I heard that earlier today, and that cracked me up. And I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, so I won't. But,
okay. Good call.
That is complete and total, there's no chance that a company like ours is going to get a sample of a pandemic virus anytime soon. The government is obviously taking extreme precautions. It's almost like getting a sample of Ebola back when. They're not going to just be spreading this around saying, here's a cup of Ebola. Why don't you test it out? So anyone telling you this, please laugh in their face.
Not too closely in their face, though, because you might give them COVID.
Right. Be 6 feet away. Yeah, right. Right. Exactly. But yeah, there's no chance. That made me laugh and chuckle, but that I'll leave it at that.
Got it. All right, we're getting a lot of questions in here now. So one question that I liked was, how far away from the coil can a UV light be effective? And I guess we're just going to say kind of your basic standard residential UV light, the blue stick type UV light that you guys offer. Generally, how far away do you recommend that?
Yeah, so when we provide a stick light, our actual light and all the manufacturers are between about 50 and 150 microwatts of energy on their lights. You only actually need 2 microwatts to kill anything if you have unlimited time. So again, intensity and time are your critical factors. So if you've got unlimited time, you only need 2 microwatts. So based on some of our lamps, whether they're 40 or 100, that amount of microwatt at 3 feet away, or basically a meter away, is you have that much intensity. So if I've got even as low as 45 microwatts at 1 meter, and again, I only need 2, you can be a meter away. Now, when you go through a coil, every time UVC light, you lose about, refracts off of a surface, you lose about 50% of its intensity. So if you can imagine bouncing through a coil, you're going to lose intensity. So we tell people, be within 12 inches of the AC coil. and you'll get through to the other side. Now, if they're real tall 5-ton units where the coil's up to my, above my hip from the floor, we recommend likely 2 lights because you've got a bigger surface area to sterilize. So, but
Got it.
yeah, really. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Dick Wers, who's actually one of my good friends and an author of a really great book about air conditioning refrigeration, asks, would mirrors in the ductwork / plenum increase effectiveness of the UV light as it regards the Airstream?
And actually, the answer is yes, but you don't have to worry about putting mirrors in there and breakage. So you can use really any highly polished surface. So aluminum, stainless steel. For a while, a lot of manufacturers offered that dimpled look, just so you'd have more refraction off the surface. All of those are great ideas. Even foil backed insulation is really good if you're in a air handler. So yeah, anything that just makes it bounce is great.
So one question is, will the UV light damage a plastic drain pan or an AC coil? And I will add, what about wiring, things like that inside an air handler? What are your suggestions there?
We always have told contractors, if we ever destroy a drain pan, we'll pay for it. And I've never had anyone come back to us. Now, there are higher microwatt UV lights where they say, don't put this in the coil, put this in the plenum. The problem with those is you're actually not getting that much more microwatt per centimeter squared. So you've actually, you've ruined the opportunity by buying those products of actually treating the coil and drain pan. Now you're just after Airstream disinfection. And again, if you're only 150 microwatts versus 50, you can't be in the coil and drain pan. Now you're in the plenum, but at 150 microwatts, you're still not able to track down really any microbial on a flyby kill. So again, I recommend anybody who shows their lights in a coil and drain pan, those are the lights you want to use ideally in that application.
So one, Shannon has asked a couple times here, to confirm what you explained, because COVID is not airborne, is it not right or accurate to market products right now claiming it will kill COVID-19? And I want to answer that first, which is that I don't think anybody's saying it's not airborne. It is carried by air, and it can become an aerosol when you sneeze or cough or that sort of thing. It's not that it's impossible that it would get on a coil. It's just less likely that it's going to be in an Airstream, based on some testing that's been done. And all of the testing, by the way, is very preliminary. There's really not any peer-reviewed tests on this because it's just so new. And I've been doing a lot of research on that, but I'll let you answer that question as well, Ron.
No, I've researched it as well, and I have not found any authority saying that this will enter into your central air system and ductwork.
So the question, I guess, is it ethical or is it unethical then to say that it does kill COVID-19?
I would say that yes. Saying UVC lights in your ductwork kill COVID-19 is making a false claim.
Got it. And a lot of that is because we just haven't tested things on COVID-19 right now, correct?
Well, it's even more that it's not in your air system and on your coil and drain pan, like you said. If I had a UV light in a room, for sure, this little push cart UV system that we put together, that there are brands on the market already that are in hospital rooms all the time, getting pushed around from hospital room to hospital room. Those absolutely will kill COVID-19. They'll kill every microbial in a hospital room, and they're very, very effective. So, we can here in our office kill COVID-19 on surfaces with our UV light, but again, it's because it's on a push cart, not in our air conditioning system.
So you're controlling the intensity of the UV and the velocity of the Airstream, correct?
For our push cart one, we're actually doing it at night. The guy plugs the unit in, he pushes the cart into a room, and he walks away for 30 seconds. He irradiates the whole room with high output UV for 30 seconds, and he knows that room is sterilized on wherever the light shined without shadows. That's the other trick to it. So, but those are those are products we do not make, but we understand them. And again, we've made our own for this present situation, but it really has to do more with the reason why UVC lights with air conditioning contractors that are offered will not be effective against COVID-19 is because COVID-19 has not been proven to be in your central air system.
Got it. Got it. Right. So it's more about, is it even there in the first place?
Correct.
Got it. Your audio just went kind of quiet. Let's see. One of the questions was about LED UV. We were always told that you couldn't do it, and now people are doing it. And so what's up with that, and does it work?
Yeah, so LED is really cool. And I think you're going to see more and more LED technologies coming across your desk and new products coming out. We've been working with LED manufacturers. Our whole industry has been working with LED guys for probably the last 10 years. But until recently, they haven't been very interested because their business was really, really, really good in just lighting applications. So, but they've started to develop LED lights at a UVA violet spectrum. So now you're not seeing a blue light, you're seeing a purple violet light coming off of these lights. Now it's a different spectrum of light. It's closer to the 400 nanometer spectrum, which is UVA and right on the visible light spectrum. It actually gives microbials too much nutrients so they can't survive. So it's kind of like way too much pepperoni pizza and all of a sudden you're dead. So I don't know if that's possible, but it's a bad analogy. But
it was a rough analogy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
it was rough.
I haven't come up with a better one, but
okay. All right, fair enough.
So I can use some help if the group wants to make any suggestions. I can see them. But yeah, so it basically over nutrients these microbials. The great application that we've been able to utilize it effectively is in mini splits, because just to keep that blower wheel clean, because it's constantly getting dirty with mold and bacteria slime. That's a great application. It only works out to a few inches at this point. So you're not getting that 3 feet of UV disinfection you get with UVC lights. So we're applying them in ice machines and in PTACs and a couple other places. Those are great because they'll last, 5 to 7 years for those lights. So, but right now they don't have enough intensity for central air. So we're not applying them yet. I know some people are applying them with carbon. We're not utilizing that technology at this point. We just haven't found it to be effective yet.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm going to allow Nathan Rothenberg and Michael Hausch, both of you. I'm going to unmute you and allow you to talk if these are two guys I know have a lot of good questions. So Nathan, it looks like your mic is live. You have a question?
Hi, Brian. Thank you. So I have a friend that has a big company up here, not in Florida, and he's giving out all his workers these handheld UVC lamps. And he's telling them when you go to a customer's house, you should shine it on everything before you touch it. And you should clean all your tools before and after you go in the house with this handheld UV. So you start to talk about the timing and the intensity. I'm trying to get as smart as Brian, but we're not even close. So if you could fill me in a little bit, is that a total waste of time? Is it a theory?
They've been using UV lights in dental applications for a long time, irradiating the tools that they use before they before they perform a root canal. They've been using UV in barber shops for years to irradiate the combs and brushes that go on your hair. So there is a great application for handheld UV. The problem with it is you can disinfect this surface, that surface, the next surface, but then as soon as you touch something else that's not irradiated, or the underside of a chair rail, now you've gotten all the microbials that are under there that have not been affected with UV. So there's definitely limitations to it, but the SkyMall directory on the airplane that they used to have, it seems like they went away. But there were 4 or 5 UV applications. One was a little ladies handheld, or little ladies compact mirror. I thought it was for ugly and disgusting guys at the bar, but really what it was for keyboards and door handles and such like that. So if you give those enough radiance time, I think it was either 30 to 60 seconds, you will disinfect that particular surface. So are they good? Yeah, but they're not 100%, and chances are you're going to touch something that you didn't irradiate properly.
My thing in the service industry, we got to go do service if you could get the calls these days, and we're trying to stay alive. And I just thought for tools, it got me really excited. I mean, how do you sit there wiping down every single tool you bring into the house? If you could kind of, the way this guy was saying, just like, slowly wave this wand of UVC over your tools. Is there any credit to that? Or you're concerned about missing something. Let's say we don't miss it. I'm more concerned about how long you have to hold it than is it the right intensity?
Yeah.
I have a drill. I'm not comfortable. I mean, again, I could do it once a day, but I'm not going to do it before and after every service call. I got a whole bag of tools, We want to see. I'm in New Jersey. We're highly infested. And is it another level? That if take the layman technician, he's a great technician. He's going to the house, he's suiting up, he's masked up, but now he wants to another layer. Does that at all make any sense to you?
No, it does. And, they've been, we've even made our own here over the years, little UV chambers. You put your tools in a UV chamber, you close the door like a microwave, and you run it for 10 seconds or a minute, depending on the size of the chamber. And you're absolutely kill everything on those tools. So I think it's a great.
Could you give us, so for the layman that doesn't understand anything, if I want to build a chamber and what do I have to know to make sure I'm using the right technology? As long as it's UVC, I'm good?
Yeah, as long as it's UVC, you're good. So any UVC product will work for that application. And, just put it in a chamber that's metal, because UVC will break down some cheap white plastics, which is what we don't use in a drain pan anymore. That's why I made that comment earlier. But so yeah, just put it in a highly polished metal box.
How long?
And probably 60 seconds is plenty, but it might be a lot less than that. It all depends on the output of the light.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm really enjoying it, Brian. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, thanks, Nathan. Appreciate you, buddy. Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what applications would UV lights be useful for, where what we call the holy trinity, which is filtration, controlling humidity, and ventilation, would not be the first suggestions?
I like all those first three a lot. So UV just added to that. We'll go after the microbials that the filters can't handle because of pressure drop issues and other issues with filtration. So, I love to add UV for disinfection. I love to add carbon for odor neutralization, but, your holy trinity is still intact.
Would, so I guess to follow that up, if, a lot of times we deal with customers who likely don't have fresh air, they have poor filtration, and possibly humidity control issues. Would it be fair to say that they should likely focus their budget on some of those first before UV, or not?
The reason why I'm in business is because they're not focusing on those first three. So if they have those first three, they probably don't have mold and bacteria in their coils. They probably don't have odors that are just keep lingering in their home that never exit. So I agree with you 1,000%. We are a Band-Aid because there's a problem, and it's because they haven't satisfied the Holy Trinity.
I think that's an answer that most people who listen to what we do like. Yeah. We're having some connectivity issues. I don't know how much of it is me and how much of it is others. I told my kids, do not go on Disney Plus while I'm doing this live stream, but they don't listen. They just don't listen.
They're kids.
This shelter in place stuff is bullcrap. Let me tell you right now. So yeah, that's great. The one question that's getting asked that I haven't asked yet, and this is where it starts to, we'll see how this goes. Somebody asked the question about hydroxyls. Obviously, you have a product that does produce hydroxyls. It also uses carbon. So talk a little bit about what your relationship is with hydroxyl PCO type products.
Yeah, my partner's background goes back to way in time, back in the 90s when he was using oxidizers and ozone to actually for food products to help with the shelf life of shellfish is where a lot of these products came up that I see on the ticker tape over here people are talking about. That's the background. A lot of the studies that were done on those products were by food guys. The Kansas State study that is referred to all the time by a lot of different manufacturers was for food. It used ozone, ozone. And again, no humans were in that space. So it was effective at extending the shelf life. A lot of guys don't use it anymore in that technology because it actually ruined the taste. So yeah, the ozone had more of an effect than they needed. With hydroxyl radicals, that gets misplaced with ozone a lot in a conversation. Hydroxyl radicals they last milliseconds. You'll never smell a hydroxyl radical. When we generate hydroxyl radicals with the titanium dioxide and the UVC light that we use, those last milliseconds. They are highly radical. That's why they call them radicals. And what they do is they bond to chemicals primarily. And when they bond to chemicals, they neutralize them and they transform them into microscopic water vapor and CO2. So when you talk about hydroxyl radicals, you're something that lasts a very short time and can have a really not good effect if it has enough time with that specific chemical. If it doesn't have enough time with that chemical, it actually can make it into a worse chemical. And there's studies on that as well too. And hey, I'm a sales guy for an indoor air quality company, so I encourage everyone to look this stuff up and find their own studies to refer to. But yeah, hydroxyl radicals are very, very effective, and we use them in our APCO technology.
All right. So one of the guys here is actually several are really not a fan of any sort of PCO being used. And I think you answered one of the questions, which is good to get out there, which is that it is highly unstable. And so it's not like O3 or even maybe some of the peroxides where it's going to end up in the space. It's really going to just stay where it is mostly. But then the couple questions that I have is, what do you do to prevent incomplete degradation? Because that's the term that gets thrown around a lot. We don't want to create these other nasty chemicals when it reacts with VOCs that maybe we didn't expect or maybe we didn't test for. I don't know if you're familiar with the studies that Richard Corsi did with the home chem study. He's a big he's not a fan of hydroxyl radicals because of some of what they can create. So what are some of your thoughts on that as it relates to the products that you all make?
Yeah, and I think that study is a good explanation of where ozone crosses into hydroxyl radicals and the ones labeled as the other. Because, no one cannot be a fan of hydroxyl radicals just because they last such a short time and I'm keeping them away from human. It's the ozone-based technology that's used in conjunction with it in some applications that becomes the real problem. So, we utilize carbon to absorb chemicals and odors so I can hold on to it long enough for it to have the proper neutralization from the process. If I don't hold on to it long enough, then that's when I get incomplete degradation, and then I potentially get worse aldehydes, which are more harmful than the ones that came into the system. So the activated carbon is key. And that's my little commercial, I guess, is we've been doing it for 12 years now. We just came out with the 10-year model that has more carbon in it. But really the key to that technology is the carbon. I hold it long enough for those very short-lived hydroxyl radicals to do their business all over that carbon cell 24/7, but it doesn't leave that carbon cell. We don't have anything coming off of the system.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a battery of questions that are the unfun ones, and here they come. So the first one is, um, why is there? I'll just ask it this way: why is there so little independent testing as it relates to specifically PCO technology? Because that's what we're talking about, versions of photocatalytic oxidation. And I would even throw some people in there who say they're creating other ions. This is sort of like one of my pet peeves. PCO is photocatalytic oxidation. So you're using light with a catalyst in order to create oxidizers, which essentially everybody's doing some version, not everybody, but doing some version of that. And it's become a dirty word that people stay away from. I don't think it is a dirty word, but there is this challenge where the EPA doesn't have any test standard and nobody has any consistency in third-party testing. What are your thoughts on that? Because this whole battery of next questions go play into that testing question.
Yeah, we've been hoping forever to have ASHRAE come out with a standard using an ASHRAE 52.2 test rig, which we ended up having our own now. We bought one, we have it in our facility. We had hoped that they would establish a standard. So you would have a battery of tests that you would have to perform against a common microbial or chemical, and you would determine how effective your product was. Get it close to what MERV was. There was originally an ultraviolet rating value, an ERV rating that ASHRAE proposed, and it never went anywhere. That was back in 06, 07. So unfortunately, yes, they're all independent studies, but they're paid for by guys like me. So if I want to have a study, I call a college and say, hey, can you study my product? And they go, what do you want the results to be? Sadly, but true. So I determine the flow rate. There's a couple products on the market. They literally did their study in a cube with no airflow. And they say we're up to 99% kill. Well, there's no airflow. But again, that's not required. So yeah, I think you're going to see the wild, wild west of indoor air quality probably for another 5-10 years. Maybe with this recent pandemic, we'll see more people concerned about indoor quality and more government agencies stepping up to make sure that you're getting what you paid for and you're not getting something that is an oxidizer that is ozone. Because that's the other thing. PCO is a negative word because people think of the oxidizer as ozone, and it can be a short-lived oxidizer or an oxidizer that lasts 20 minutes in your home like ozone does. So yeah, again, it's we just have to do a better job, or hope that a government agency is going to come through and clear the message for everyone.
And I think also as sensor technologies get better and better, consumers are going to be able to see this actually on a readout somewhere that tells them where they stand, which I think is a good thing. One of the questions that Nathan had was, is UVC dangerous to the eye and skin? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I've been blinded by the light, so to speak, myself, but I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, no, you have. And, I asked people in a training who thinks UV light works personally. And they all, the people that raise their hand. Yeah, it doesn't take more than about 5 seconds. And I always warn people, don't think it's 30 or 60 seconds, no matter what you read. Think of it as 5 seconds. So as soon as you turn it on, you turn it off to test it. But yeah, you should wear proper eye protection, which is any plastic lens will work, keep UVC out. But your skin, it only takes a little more time to start to give you a skin rash, and you basically get sun poisoning. So keep clear of UVC for humans.
One question I'll answer and just see if you have if you want to add anything or take anything away. It says, so if you run your fan all the time and people sneeze and cough, it does go through the Airstream and kill the virus, or am I missing something? If I understand correctly, it does not kill what is on the surface. And I think you're getting that backwards. First off, we're talking specifically about COVID-19, the SARS virus. The studies show that it's very unlikely to end up all the way in your return and then making it into your evaporative coil in the first place. So that's thing one. And then thing two, UV, traditional UV, is going to do a much better job, or it's going to be much easier for it to irradiate, to kill, to neutralize microbial life of any sort, whether it's viral, and there's always that, is a virus alive or not thing, but it's going to be more likely to neutralize on a surface than it is in the Airstream. It's just much easier for it to do that. Is that a correct answer? What would you add to that?
That's right. And again, you can size for Airstream disinfection, and there's companies you guys probably never heard of, like Sterile Air and UVDI and UV Resources. You may have Brian, because you've been in this a while, but they only do commercial. They don't do residential, and they focus on Airstream disinfection. They have products that get wheeled into hospital facilities to disinfect on a timely manner. So you can get as scientific with this technology as you'd like to, and there is an opportunity to kill microbials in Airstream. You just have to work with the manufacturer that it's sized correctly for that application.
We got a couple other good questions. At some point, I'm going to have to cut this off because the questions are all great. So this is a good one. It's just a general one. John says, what is the best product for COVID-19 in a residential central AC system for a customer's home? So from your perspective, what's the advice you give somebody who's afraid, they want to do something to protect themselves from COVID-19?
Okay. Bleach. Sorry.
Gargle it or
no, I would
Okay,
just
all right.
apply it to surfaces, wash your hands. It does get me a little ticked off when I see manufacturers saying their products kill stuff on surfaces when they're mounted in your ductwork. That's just not true. And I always tell people, ask for the data, ask for the original study. You'll see that it was probably done in a cube, which there's a lot of, I see some products flowing up and down your chat room. Those products were all tested in a cube, or they were inches away from the microbia they were testing against. So when they say their product kills stuff on surfaces, ask for the original study from the university, and you'll see that it clearly states that there's no airflow. So yeah, bleach is my go-to. You know, when we had mold under the sink, I ripped out all the drywall. I bleached everything. I didn't irradiate with UV. I put UV in my ductwork to keep my coil and drain pan clean and to handle, you know, odors when it came across my APCO.
So it sounds to me like your strategy, that what you believe in based on what you're building, is a combination of traditional UV, some hydroxyls in combination with carbon. Is that right?
Yeah,
Am I missing something there?
Nope, that's perfectly stated. Yep. My business partner, Chris Willett, who designed and engineered all of our stuff, he's my little brainiac, but he just basically combined the chocolate and peanut butter, as he calls it, by applying carbon with UV. And really what the hydroxyl radicals do for us, or the P or the C in PCO, the catalyst, is to regenerate the carbon. That's his whole purpose. You know, we're not after anything more than having that carbon cell last forever. So that's exactly right. It's the UV combined with the carbon, and we use the catalyst to regenerate the carbon.
Now, I imagine with your device, there is going to be some pressure drop across it when it's mounted into a supply duct, right?
You know what? That's negligible. It's really negligible. We've never really had any problem with our technology and flow rates. Matter of fact, you know, if you treat a coil and drain pan with UVC 24/7, you'll actually keep it running at its peak operating efficiency. So there's definitely no drawbacks to airflow.
So Caleb's asking, he wants the specific answer. So has it been measured? Have you looked at or rated the pressure drop in the supply duct for your PCO product?
We have, yeah, for many years we've had it tested, even if we changed the technology at all. So we're about a 0.01 in pressure drop, but yeah, it's very low. You can actually see through our cells, visibly see through them. So yeah, we were always worried maybe about some whistling and such like that, but even the new APCO X with more cells is still full flow. So yeah, we're not restrictive.
Got it. Kenneth asks, where does the fear of producing formaldehyde and benzene come from in regards to UV PCO? Is this a real concern that we should consider? You know,
a lot of there's one PCO study that went around to everybody. It was actually the the facility that manufactures titanium dioxide. So it's kind of like walking into a bleach facility, yeah, those are kind of scary. You got to be careful. But, what most companies are applying is just trace amounts of this catalyst. And therefore you're not going to have any titanium dioxide falling into your airspace or creating additional formaldehydes or benzene, toluene, ethylene, xylene, which actually comes from gasoline. So BTEX. So I don't know where the benzene came in from, but it is kind of funny that we end up talking about all these chemicals, of which most of them aren't in your home anyway. But formaldehyde's a real one. If you don't properly neutralize formaldehyde, which is considered a long chain VOC, then you're actually going to make it worse into a worse aldehyde. And now you've got something that really can affect your environment. So, but yeah, there's just a couple products that you just have to be careful. Are you absorbing these chemicals long enough to properly neutralize them? And again, that's where you look for the study. And that's what we tried to do is go to an ASHRAE 52.2 lab and have it tested so they could show the actual breakdown of those chemicals. So, but that's where that probably question comes from, Brian.
Do you have those? Do you have those tests,
Yep.
or do you have more in the works?
Yeah, no, we have those tests from AirMid, which is probably back from 2011. So we have our new APCO X being tested as well, but we're fortunate enough to have our own ASHRAE 52.2 test rig now. So when we make a change to the product or the technology, we can actually understand at full flow at 492 feet per minute what's happening to that formaldehyde, whether it's over an hour or 2 or 5 or whatever. Even a single pass, we can determine what we've got in the air, if we've got something worse or not.
One thing I would like to see more of, which is what the home chem study tried to do, or I shouldn't say try, they did, but you've limited funding for these sorts of things in academic environments, is more testing in real world, home white paper style tests. So I'll just put that bug in your ear. As we get better and better consumer grade sensors, I would like to see us do more and more of that. And I know we have a lot of people who would be excited to help participate in that if you're ever interested. Kind of rubber meets the road, real world, before and after type testing.
We would love it. And we always offer our products for anyone that asks, that say, I want to do a study. We give you product free, no charge. And you guys just tell us how it all came out, or you don't have to. So yeah, we would love to see more of that. And like you said, more meters getting onto the market. We're actually coming out with one ourselves in the fall, but really and truly, the more meters out there, the better. And they're gonna actually call out ozone generators as oxidizers and chemicals in the air. So if you are putting an ozone generator in a house and then you put in one of these meters to detect chemicals, guess what? That thing's going to be going off like nuts. So yeah, I think the more meters, the better. The more homeowners understand the technology and how it relates to their daily life, the better. And we'll all be better off in HVAC in our industry by promoting these technologies, which people want, and they're buying portable air purifiers every day that don't do squat and they cost them a bunch of money. And the fact is, I love this because AC guys are coming out of the woodwork now saying, I really want to start pushing more IAQ. I mean, it's a huge revenue generator too, besides that. But I think helping your customer base with the best technology for their home and a whole house solution is awesome.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, and we'll hold you to that. You've been entered into the maelstrom now, so you're gonna get hammered with the questions, and I know that's what you need right now is a lot more of this in your busiest time in history. I did want to finish with one question because a couple people had asked about bipolar, which some people call cold plasma, which is essentially using free electrons. What are your thoughts on that technology? Do you have anything that you know about it or can add to that conversation?
Bipolar's been great for many years to basically bring particles together, and they're wonderful when you have a filter on the back side of those technologies. The data as it relates to bacteriological reduction, just ask for the study. I really encourage people. I saw somebody asked about ASHRAE 62.1. You know, a lot of products are going to get flagged because of some of the exaggerations and claims they're making for outside air reduction reasons. And, you know, but again, just ask for the research. You guys are, you know, if you're on this forum, you're obviously good guys and you're concerned about what you offer your customers. And I think it's awesome. So I credit you, Brian, and everyone in the room. I think it's great, but, you know, just ask for the data. I can tell you anything, you know, about myself, but, you know, ask for the data. So I encourage that with bipolar too, that the bacteriological and the chemical reductions, there's just not a lot of data on that from any other white papers or any other universities, only the ones that were sponsored by the manufacturer.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's the number one message, I guess, that and why I brought you on versus a lot of other people who have, you know, wanted to come on, is that I felt like we could have that honest conversation. I'm actually not, for the sake of pure transparency here, I'm not a user of Fresh-Aire UV products currently in my contracting business. We don't do a lot of, I know we don't do a lot of IAQ products, and obviously Fresh-Aire UV is not a sponsor of this, which I think is important. I've made the mistake in the past of dipping my toe into sponsorship with IAQ, and that at this stage in the game was a mistake because there's just so much finger pointing and there's so little data. Not that I'm saying anything bad about the company that I did work with, because I like them a lot and I think they're great folks. But today's was mostly about UV. Hopefully that was helpful, and I really like what you said, Ron, specifically about UV and its applications, because I think there are some really good applications for it, and I think it does and can work in residential. Actually, one final question though is there have been some questions about putting UV in locations where you can get stray light hitting maybe the inner liner in a flex duct, maybe plastics that aren't kind of like drain pan type plastics, and some people have mentioned that can cause some VOCs in and of itself. Have you experienced that at all? I mean, obviously we know it could create breakdown, but some people have said that it actually has created some chemicals.
Oh no, that's absolutely true. They're right. You know, you're changing your central air heating system into a disinfection device. So in that case, you should take precautions. You know, before 2005, equipment wasn't even rated for UVC. So people would, you know, apply tape to wires and shield the UV from flex duct, which they still do now, and shield the UV from filters, which they still do now. So yeah, I always tell people to take precautions. This UV stuff really works, but paper and flimsy plastic won't hold up very well. So yeah, make those modifications for your homeowner, and you'll get a better result.
Quick question. Where's the right place to put it? Would you rather have a UV light on the inlet side of an evaporator coil or on the outlet side?
You know, that's the question I get all the time. And really and truly, it's up to you guys where you see the most microbial growth in the system. Put it there. Again, for most homes, a single UV light will work, and it'll penetrate through the coil and into the drain pan, regardless of what side it's on, whether it's in the A plate or above the A coil. For larger 5 and 6 ton units, you know, I would probably say put it on both sides, but really it's really your decision. You're the guy with eyes on the mold.
Got it. All right. So it's past 5. I promised I wouldn't go any further. We could go on for hours and hours. Thank you so much for your time, Ron. It is much appreciated, and I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody. Thanks so much for your time and attention. It's a great group. I'm happy to be part of this.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all for joining us. This was live cast on YouTube. I don't know how it all came out with some of the connectivity issues. I completely lost internet for a while, so sorry about that. That is part of broadcasting from home, and especially living out in the middle of nowhere where I live. So thank you for your patience with all of that, and for coming back today, even after we kind of covered some of the same things yesterday. Means a lot. And stay safe out there. Follow best practices. I've got an article that should be coming out in the next couple of days. It's going to cover a lot of different topics from the contractor perspective of things that we should do or shouldn't do as it relates to COVID, looking at a really scientific approach. So watch for that in your tech tip emails. And hey, we'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks for listening and watching the HVAC School podcast. See you next time.